today. A lot to get to. The Patriots offseason officially underway.
Why, what happened?
We have, for the second time in 2 years, a coaching search. We will obviously get to player personnel and some early thoughts on free agency and the draft.
Hopefully this is the last year we're going to do this for a while.
Hopefully.
Right?
I'll let people know now if you miss any of this. You can find these shows on the 98.5 The Sports Hub YouTube page, 98.5thesportshub.com as well. Kyle Fabrizio behind the glass. We're going to start, now that these shows have a shelf life of more than 2 hours because there's not a game right after, we're going to kind of post some clips of it and things like that. But before we get to the offseason as a whole, Dolph, I do just kind of want to put a bow on the 2024 season.
Sure.
And you can call this a little cheesy if you want, but, you look at every season, you come away from every season, just as me, as somebody who covers the sport, but also as a fan of the sport, as an observer of the sport of football, like you walk away from any season and you try to think like, okay, what is the one big lesson that this team taught me about the game or reinforced about the game, right? There's that, and I guess this could be separate. What is the lasting legacy of the 2024 Patriots? I think we know what the lasting legacy is. It's the mistake that was the Gerard Mayo tenure, right? I don't know if you disagree with that, but that kind of feels where we're at. But what is what lesson did we learn from this team? To me, the lesson reinforced is you have to have a plan for your roster. You can't be just throwing players left and right, but I already felt that. If you've listened to this show, you know how I felt about the left tackle position in particular. My lesson learned from the 2024 Patriots, though, is that having redundancies in leadership is so important, because even if you have one of the best teams in the league, at a certain point, you're going to hit a speed bump. It's going to hit the fan. Things are going to get messy. And do you have people in place to turn to lead you through that? Looking back on it, and we'll talk to Andrew Callahan later. He had that great story in the Herald this week, him and Doug Kyde, about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, some of the other things we've heard about the Gerard Mayo era, right? It started great. It started like they played the Bengals. They won that. They had the competitive game against Seattle. And then they lost to the Jets, and it felt like they never recovered. And looking back on it, especially with David Andrews hurt, with Juwan Bentley hurt, the first-time head coach, a bunch of first-time positional coaches, first-time coordinators, who was there to look to when this team needed somebody to look to for a sense of direction? And I don't think there was anybody. So as we go forward here, obviously they need to add a massive influx of talent to the roster. That is, more than the coaching search, priority number one for me for the Patriots this offseason. But on top of that, they need to get some guys in place, some cornerstone players that can kind of be guides for the way this thing needs to be done on a day-to-day basis throughout the season. So that's my lesson learned from the 2024 Patriots. I don't know if you have one that stands out particularly strongly to you.
Well, I think it's a fair take on the players and the leadership void that they had early in the season with the injuries to Andrews and Bentley. That was almost sort of like a black swan event type of thing where it's like they lost all their top leadership.
Yeah.
In that locker room.
Peppers was a captain too. They lost him.
And that was, and the Bentley thing is like, that's the sort of thing that they never really recovered from. They could never really get going in that position and that on that side of the ball, that whole thing. But my takeaway, Alex, is like, you need good coaching. You need good coaching no matter what the roster is. And I think even if the Patriots had a better offseason, if they added more to this roster, if they hit on a couple more draft picks, say they had a decent left tackle and Jalen Polk was a pretty good receiver for them. Still a below-average offensive roster. Still an average, at best, roster overall. This team needed good coaching. And for them to jump Gerard Mayo from inside linebackers coach to head coach, and then give him a defensive coordinator, DeMarcus Covington, who also skipped a couple of steps. Nobody goes from defensive line coach to defensive coordinator. You got to coach another position group in between there, probably.
Usually.
And then Alex Van Pelt is a guy who's been around the league, experience. He's developed some quarterbacks, never really called plays. And so you put an offensive coordinator that's never called plays, a defensive coordinator that's never been close to that level of the job, and then on top of all that, the head coach the guy that goes from inside linebackers to head coach. That was a disaster that everybody should have seen coming. I'm just disappointed in myself as someone who covers the team that I didn't see that disaster coming. Like, everyone should have known that was how it was going to go with the coaching staff. You gotta have good coaching to be competent and you need experience, and not necessarily that you need a guy. You can't ever have a rookie coach or a guy who's done it for the first time. You can't do what they just did. You can't have guys in all the major posts that have never done it before, skipping a couple steps in their progression as coaches. That was their biggest mistake of the season. And I know the roster is still the biggest problem on the team because the players play, the players win. But the coaching took a bad situation and made it worse, and that's my takeaway from this particular season.
So that's your takeaway, but let me ask you this, because like we've kind of known, right, that you need coaching in the NFL. We kind of knew it wasn't good enough. Is there something you look at from this season that maybe changes your perspective or that you'll apply moving forward as you evaluate teams in the future, evaluate games in the future, whatever? Do you feel like you have a lesson learned, like a new lesson learned from this season?
Well, that actually is where I'd probably look at the roster, because I've always, my argument has always been like I would focus on fixing the offensive line, left tackle in particular, before addressing the weapons, the receiver. I always say, like, you can make it work with a less than top-notch receiver. You don't necessarily need a Jamar Chase like at receiver. I'm starting to rethink that. I'm starting to think you can get by with just a decent offensive line, which the Patriots didn't even have that. And yes, they need to address the offensive line, arguably more than any other position, but they don't have to address that with all pros across the board. I think you can just get a good, decent line going, but you can't get by with just average receivers. I think you need at least one or two good wide receivers. You don't need Jamar Chase, but you need good wide receivers. You need like a T. Higgins. You need someone like that atop your depth chart. You can't get by with what they had this year at the position. I think Drake May showed us where he sort of did cover up for the offensive line woes at times, where he was able to escape the pocket and make plays with his legs and things like that. So that's where I'm sort of rethinking the way they need to build the roster. Like I'm not saying I don't want to like run it back with Vidarian Lowe and then get DK Metcalf and hope for the best. Like they got to address the O-line. I just think the big investment, the high-end talent should be a weapon. Like they don't need an all-pro left tackle. Get a good, solid left tackle. Get as good of a wide receiver as you can this offseason.
617-779-0985. You want to weigh in on the Patriots offseason here on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff. Like I said, we're just kind of putting a bow on 2024 before we move on to what's ahead, and we'll get to the coaching search. But first, just real quick how he got here. Gerard Mayo fired, within an hour of the end of the season. I really never seen anything like that. Mike Reese in his column this morning wrote that was kind of one of the big questions from the players. Not necessarily why Mayo was fired, but why he was fired when he was fired within an hour of that game ending. Your reaction, do you think it was the right move, not just to fire him, but to fire him when and in the way they did?
Well, to fire him when they did was odd. I get it that, maybe Robert Kraft just wanted to show that he's being decisive.
That's what it felt like, sending a message. He's
sending a message that he's taking decisive action on a disaster of a season. But I don't understand the idea that if they let him come in on Monday morning and at least talk to the team or something before you let him go. Who would have a problem with that? Who cares? He's going to be gone either way. I thought that was a little odd to do it that soon, and Robert Kraft thinks he's sending a message that he's taking decisive action by doing just that. Offseason's just beginning for them.
Yeah,
we're not even close. You're not even close to turning the whole operation around. Nobody has anything more to prove than ownership, and if they think that just going from Gerard Mayo to it looks like it's going to be Mike Vrabel as their next head coach. If they think that alone is going to turn the team around, they are sadly mistaken. They have so far to go as far as bolstering the roster. How are they going to fill out the rest of the coaching staff? The way reporters are talking about how it goes behind the scenes in the front office, they need to bolster the front office. How are you going to fill out the personnel guys? Is Mike Vrabel going to have his own GM? That whole thing. The process is just beginning, and so. Yeah, it's fine for Robert Kraft to send that message that, I am moving on from this guy as soon as I possibly can because that was an unacceptable season. I get it, but you can't stop there. He has so far to go to prove that he's really taking decisive action with the team.
I want to get to that more in a bit, but first let's go to Dan in Hopkinton. Dan, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Hey,
so I think the timing of the firing is pivotal here to how top-down management, from ownership through management, handled the situation. They had to have known, based on the way the whole season played out, that Gerard Mayo was going to get let go on Monday. But what he did on Sunday is what caused him to get fired on Sunday. The Krafts had to have known he was going to go out there and try and win that game, and that Buffalo was going to try to lose it. He had to have drafted that letter prior to the game on Sunday. How they the dereliction of duty is that they allowed him to go out and coach that game. I mean, are you kidding me? The minute Joe Milton started tearing it up, they should have put a running back in and said, we're going to direct snap and run the ball every single play of the game. That was the real dereliction of duty. It's not what Gerard Mayo did. It's how the Krafts handled it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for calling, Dan. Do you believe that winning that game is the reason Gerard Mayo got fired, or is the reason he got fired when he did?
No, I think it was basically decided after the Chargers game. Maybe the timing, like if because they won that game, because of the way he handled it, maybe they said, you know what, screw you, get out of my building. That's a bad sign. If that's a sign that he's not really, he does not in command of the upper. He's just flying by the seat of his pants, reacting emotionally. I wouldn't like that if that's the case. I hope that's not the case.
He was never going to go out there and try to lose the game, because he had to know at the very least his job was on the line.
I can't believe Joe Milton played that well. Like I thought they did all just about everything they could to lose that game. Like maybe don't play Kayshon Boutte or Antonio Gibson, I guess.
I was telling people all week, why are we assuming Joe Milton won't go out there and sling it? I was making Matt Flynn references all week.
Yeah.
So don't say nobody expected Joe Milton to play.
Well, no, I wasn't. Yeah, but nobody was assuming he was going to go do what he did.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, you couldn't ask him to lose the game without guaranteeing him his job for next year. You just can't do that. So
my takeaway is that like it just is what it is. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
You can't tell the team to go lose a game on purpose. You can't tell Joe Milton to go throw interceptions on purpose so they can get better draft picks and then replace them with another quarterback. You can't do that with the GM that's like going to replace them. Do a solid for him. I don't get that part of it. Like that. What did you want them to do? At the end of the day, they're going to go out and play, and they just happened to play extraordinarily well, and the Bills sort of let them have it. And that's just how it goes. I wish they had the number one pick. Don't get me wrong, but that's just how it goes in those games.
617-779-0985. We're off and running here on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. Gerard Mayo out. Who will replace him? We'll get to that next here on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
More Sunday Kickoff is on the way on the Sports Hub.
It's Jim from Ace Ticket. Tired of getting ripped off when you buy tickets? At Ace Ticket, we've changed the way you buy tickets with all-in pricing. No more fees. The first price you see is what you pay. Call us at 1-800-MY-SEATS or visit aceticket.com.
1-800-MY-SEATS. Billy Jaffe here. Is your stone foundation in need of repair or
for the Lions. Ben Johnson, that was a virtual interview. Now, my understanding, and this is something I think we've discussed fairly widely over the course of the past week or so, Mike Vrabel is believed to be the overwhelming favorite to be the next head coach for the New England Patriots. If that's not work out, Ben Johnson also in strong consideration. Now, as of right now, this very second, the Patriots have not finalized a deal to make Mike Vrabel their next head coach, but I literally have not talked to anybody who believes that this will not happen. Now, there's a lot to like for Mike Vrabel. The Patriots, Tom, are certainly familiar with him. Obviously, they played against him. He played for them. He is certainly a member of the Patriots Hall of Fame, a former All-Pro in New England, a successful head coach with the Titans. This one, I think it's safe to say, makes a lot of sense.
Ian, my understanding is there have been contract talks between the Patriots and Mike Vrabel's agent, so potentially a big domino that could fall here in the coming days.
All things pointing towards Mike Vrabel. Now, look, so that there's been some wild takes going around about the Patriots coaching search the last couple days. I think some bad faith arguments. I think some people outright making stuff up just to try to justify the candidate people want for the job. Let me say this. I think they'd both be good hires. I would be, and I know, you have to have a take at sports radio. This is my take. Let it play out. I think Mike Vrabel would be a good hire. I think Ben Johnson would be a good hire. I don't think it's about who's a better coach. It's they both have their upsides, and they both have their ifs. Vrabel is an established program builder. Johnson's a great offensive mind. With Vrabel, you wonder about Drake May's development and who will be in charge of that. With Johnson, you wonder about what the program will look like overall and if he's ready for that next step, because it's very different being an offensive coordinator and being a head coach. We've seen a lot of very good coordinators flame out as coaches. So it's which if would you rather deal with? Whose talking point do you think is more significant? And on. But it's a philosophical football discussion. I think they're both good head coaches. That being said, I think what's getting lost in the wash here, this is an important decision. I don't think it's the most important decision the Patriots will make this offseason. I don't think who they hire as coach is more make or break for the future than who they hire to run the front office. Because at the end of the day, whether it's Mike Vrabel, whether it's Ben Johnson, whether it's Brian Flores, whether it's Aaron Glenn, whether it's Bill Belichick, whether it's anybody else, you give any coach something resembling this roster, and they are going to struggle. They cannot just make minimal on-the-margins upgrades again this year like they did last year. They need a significant influx of talent this year, and they need a significant influx of talent over the next few years in order to get back to competing. I've heard a lot of talk about floor versus ceiling with Vrabel and Johnson. And I understand why it's talked about, but again, let's not lose sight of the players should really set the ceiling, not the coach. The really good teams, the ceiling is set by the players and the roster talent more than anything else. So we're going to kind of go back and forth here on Johnson and Vrabel. Again, this is a philosophical football discussion. You can. I don't want to speak for you, but for me, like I think Mike Vrabel, I would rather deal with Mike Vrabel's what ifs. I think he's the better option for what the situation they're in. But if they hired Ben Johnson, I would say that is a good hire as well. I would have my questions that come with that, just like I'm going to have my questions that come with Vrabel. But at the end of the day, I want this all under the umbrella of, and you talked about it last segment, Matt, the roster needs to be better. Neither of these coaches are going to succeed. So I'm curious how you feel, Vrabel Johnson, but like I would take either one. I think it's going to be Vrabel. I think that's the right choice, but it's not going to matter if they don't improve the roster.
Yeah, no, it's all about the roster. Like, don't tell me Mike Vrabel's going to be their big move of the offseason. Like, that is my concern here, is that even if it's Ben Johnson, like, Ben Johnson would be going from a loaded offensive roster. And I don't care what anyone says about Jared Goff. He's a good quarterback. He's not the worst quarterback in the league or anything like that. So, like, he took a good quarterback. Yes, he's made him better, but he's got an elite offensive line. He's got good weapons up and down the field. Like, he's going from that to whatever you call this offensive roster here in New England. Like, they need to get him players. Yeah, Vrabel, yes, every coach needs players. And so my thing about the head coach is that, like, I think people make honestly kind of a too big of a deal about the head coach part. Like, I think the head coach is just like, have a program, instill some discipline, prepare the team, oversee the operation, manage the game on Sunday. Now, I'm not saying just anybody can come in and do that.
No, it's actually very hard to do.
But it's hard. But, like, a coach can only take you so far. If you have elite talent, you can overcome not great coaching, if that makes sense.
So, look, I went back the other night. I was watching that Texas-Ohio State game, and I'm scrolling on Twitter during the game, and I see, oh, wow, it's the 10-year anniversary of the 2014 divisional game against the Ravens, which is probably the greatest game in Gillette Stadium history.
Yeah.
First of all, that game's 10 years ago. I feel old. Second of all, so, like, the college game wraps up, and I'm not really tired yet. So, because I have such a thrilling personal life. I'm going to go watch the second half of that game. So on, like, NFL.com or whatever. And I was, like, looking at the names that are on the field for the Patriots. And look, that's a very well-coached game. Some of the stuff Belichick's doing defensively with how they're taking away Torrey Smith in that game is great. Obviously, Josh McDaniels goes, that might be Josh's masterpiece between the tackle-eligible stuff with Michael Holman and Inui and the double pass from Edelman, right? But, I mean, I'm just watching them on defense, and, like, every guy I see is like a stud. Chandler Jones, Vince Wilfork, Dante Hightower, Jamie Collins, Brandon Browner, Devin McCourty, Darrelle Revis, obviously. And it's like, I know, right? I'm trying to go like around the defense, but it's like, man, like
Patrick Chung.
Every time, like, oh, who stepped up and made that play? Waiting for like some like depth player to. Tavon Wilson had one nice hit, and when I watched him there, but it's like there's just playmakers all over the field, and it's a great game from Belichick and McDaniels. They were able to do what they wanted to do in that game because of the talent on the field. So, like, it was just kind of the stark reminder that, like, as we're so locked in on the coaching search, right? Let's not lose sight of they need better players on the football team first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, like you said, I think either of them would be a fine hire. I'm fine with either of them in a vacuum, individually. They both have their strengths. They both have their drawbacks, questions, things like that.
Yep.
My real concern is how they're going to surround them. Obviously the players, but the rest of the staff, the front office. Like, don't tell me corners are going to be cut there. Like, you got to, if it's Ben Johnson, you got to surround him with a high-end, experienced defensive staff. Just like if you think he's the next Sean McVay had Wade Phillips as his defensive coordinator to start out his career in Los Angeles.
Yep.
Ben Johnson needs a Wade Phillips. Mike Vrabel needs a good offensive staff, on the other side of the ball. A guy that preferably with experience, I would say. Josh McDaniels I would like because he has the experience. I think he would be good for Drake May's development. I think he would have a good chance to get him out of those bad habits. And you would have stability there. You're not going to lose Josh McDaniels to a head coach job again, I don't think. So at least that McDaniels would be here for a while.
Yeah.
If you brought him back, you wouldn't have that guy getting poached because he's the next Ben Johnson.
So for what it's worth, I think that talking point's a little overblown. I do, and
Which one?
The whole thing about losing the offensive coordinator and all of that. And we'll see where Josh is at if he's the hire. I know he's kind of gone. He was at Ohio State. He was at USC. I think he visited a couple other college programs to try to get an idea of some of these more modern offensive concepts. We have seen him work in the quarterback run game a bit. He did that with Cam Newton, obviously, in 2020. There's more to be built out there, but we have seen that. But that is a positive for Josh. I do kind of want to see Vrabel try to find the next Ben Johnson, though. That is kind of what I want.
Yeah, I mean, he had Matt LaFleur in Tennessee.
And Arthur Smith, who had a rough night last night, but overall has been pretty successful. A big part of the draw to me with Vrabel is program building. Part of program building is hiring the right people. And if he finds zone Ben Johnson, first off, everybody's saying, well, worst case scenario, he finds a bad offensive coordinator. Best case scenario, he finds a good offensive coordinator who's gone in a year. That's why you need Ben Johnson, because he'll be here. Ben Johnson, everybody's putting up on this pedestal as like the greatest offensive mind of all time this week. He was in Detroit for 3 years. So don't assume the guy's going to just jump in 1 year. I think if it goes that well, you probably won a Super Bowl, and that's a good problem they have, right? You probably get 2 years with a guy like that, maybe 3. And even if he does jump, and this is what's going to be important with Vrabel as well, and that's something Bill did at a high level here for years and years and years, and this goes to the program building part with Vrabel, you got to have a pipeline. All right, your OC gets hired. Who's up next? Is your tight ends coach? Do you have like a pass game coordinator? Is your quarterbacks coach ready to be the next guy? So I'll be curious to see who Vrabel hires in those roles. And the reality is, all right, you get 2 years out of the first offensive coordinator you hire. That guy gets hired away. Fine. If you have somebody in the pipeline, now you get 2 more years, and the system shouldn't really change much, if at all, because it's the same coaching philosophy and all that. It's a guy who's already in the offense. All right, so now that guy gets hired away after 2 years. Well, now Drake May's 6 years in. I'm not super worried about his development at that point. You look at what's happened with the Bills, right? And they even botched it once with Ken Dorsey, but Josh Allen, at this point, they're churning through coordinators, but he's good enough that it doesn't matter. So, like, everybody said, well, you need Ben Johnson because he's this great offensive mind. What if Matt LaFleur's up there among the best offensive minds in the league right now? Vrabel found him.
What about Mike LaFleur?
So that would be a good one.
He's not calling plays out in L.A. That's just like his brother. He's the offensive coordinator for the Rams, but he's not calling plays. So coming here and calling the plays would technically be like a promotion for him.
So technically it would. It's a little tricky because by title it's not. So the Rams would have to give him permission to interview with the Patriots. Now, maybe he goes to Sean McVay and says, hey, I need this for my career. Can you please give me the chance? And then who knows? But, I think it's, what if Vrabel finds his own Ben Johnson? What if he, and I'm not worried about the guy leaving. I'm not, because I trust, this is why I want Vrabel as the coach. Because I trust him to build that pipeline and have the next guy ready.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, look, I'm Mr. Baby the quarterback, right? Build it around him, give him what he needs. But I also think once a guy's been in the league 5, 6, 7 years, especially if that guy is at the level we think Drake May is going to be, it does become a little turnkey. So I'm not super worried about that. That's one part of the discussion with Vrabel. And again, all the reporting right now indicates it's probably going to be Mike Vrabel. It looks like it's heading in that direction for the Patriots. So Vrabel's offensive coordinator, I think, is one of 2 major questions you have about him as the head coach. The other one applies to Johnson too. Who is actually building the roster? Who is going to give Mike Vrabel the players he needs to hit that apex, which we talked about earlier? Let's get to that next here on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
More Sunday Kickoff coming up on the Sports Hub.
Amica Insurance is proud to be the exclusive auto, home, and life insurance partner of the 18-time
Like, they're not going to lose that guy after one season. You'll have him for 2-3 years. And the Texans still have Bobby Slowick.
Right.
Like, he's been good for C.J. Stroud's development, I think.
And if they do lose him after one season, things went incredibly, incredibly well. And at that point, fine, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Because we just had one heck of a football season.
Right.
So,
You're talking about a real miracle worker. If an inexperienced OC comes in and turns the whole offense around right now.
If the worst thing that happens is you lose your offensive coordinator after 1 year because the offense was so good, oh, yeah, that'd be terrible. I certainly don't want to see an offense like that. Jeez, that would be. Can you imagine suffering through that, Dolloff? My goodness.
A competent offense? Who wants that?
So, again, things are kind of trending towards towards Drake May here. This is why towards Mike Vrabel. That's why you don't read the YouTube chat while you're doing the show. Things are trending towards Mike Vrabel here. What would need to happen in your mind for Mike Vrabel to be a successful head coach in New England? Because he's not going to step in, status quo and just turn this thing around as is. There's too much that needs to be done. But like big picture, and there's a lot. We could probably do the next hour and a half on it, but we have other stuff to get to. We're talking to Andrew Callahan at 9:20. Give me like big picture bullet points, 2 or 3 things that needs to happen for Mike Vrabel to be a successful coach in New England if and when he's the hire.
Well, this is why I think the Mike Vrabel is the coach they need right now. What I've been saying, Barth, is that he's good at the head coachy stuff. He can build culture, build a program, instill some discipline, prepare the team, manage the game on Sunday. And he's has like a knack for that. Like the in-game stuff on Sunday, like he thinks outside the box. He makes decisions that they seem odd on the surface. Like it's a little Belichickian in that regard, just in terms of how he manages the game. Like be good at all that stuff. This is what they needed in the post-Belichick era.
Nuts and bolts.
That's what they needed to carry over from Belichick, especially with this roster, is that don't take penalties, have a good game plan, manage your timeouts and all that stuff, and have a culture, have control of the locker room, and have everybody buying in. Mayo had buy-in, but it was probably the wrong kind of buy-in the way that season went.
Yeah.
But he needs to do all of those things well, and he will stick around. He'll have success, but he'll have success in his own right. But for the team to get good again, now we start to get into specifics on offense in particular. He needs to prove that he can think forward on offense. He needs to prove that he's not going to have this antiquated, we're going to run the ball and we're going to ground and pound you like he did with Derrick Henry.
Hire somebody to do that.
Hire someone to do that and trust them and say we're going to modernize, we're going to do what the league demands on offense right now. He needs to prove that he's not going to have an antiquated view on offense. They need to be forward thinking on that side of the ball, and I think that's what he needs to prove. I think all that other stuff I said, I have confidence that he's going to be good at all that stuff, and that's why he is going to restore a level of competence to the Patriots, which is sort of my point where it's can we get back to being competent and stable? Then we can worry about having a high-flying, innovative offense. Yes, he has to prove that stuff, but I think he's going to be good at all the so-called head coachy stuff, and that's why he's going to be, he's going to improve the team in those areas.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. You talk about program building, and essentially what that means, it's the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month operation, and the idea that if you tighten everything up and you're doing the right things Monday through Saturday, things are going to be easier on Sunday. If you're doing the right things in the off-season, things are going to be easier during the season. You do the right things from January through April, things are going to be easier in the draft, things like that. And he built a successful program in Tennessee before John Robinson ruined it by trading A.J. Brown, but we know he can do that.
Vrabel was against that.
He was vehemently against that, and that was kind of the beginning for the end for him in Tennessee.
That's another reason he needs to have a GM that he trusts on the same page.
So that's kind of where I wanted to go next. And right now, we don't know who has final say for the Patriots. Look, they're probably not going to have a general manager by title. The Crafts have never had one. They just, for whatever reason, don't do that. I don't really care. Because it's a title, right? Call him president of football operations. Call him chief football officer.
The executive grand poobah of football personnel.
The football overlord, as Phil Perry likes to call. I don't care what you call him. Here's what I care about. It's the concept called final say. There's 6 guys in the room on draft night. 3 want Abdul Carter. 3 want Travis Hunter. Who gets to put their fist on the table and say, we're taking my guy? My vote counts as 2. I'm in charge here. That's not something that's decided in the moment. That's power given from ownership. That is essentially your GM. Elliot Wolf had final say this past year. He's still in the building, but given Robert Kraft's press conference last week, it doesn't sound like it's a guarantee that he's going to keep final say. Probably shouldn't, given the way the roster looked this year. If it's Ben Johnson's not getting final say. He's going to bring somebody with him, probably Ray Agnew, who's the assistant GM in Detroit, maybe Chris Spielman to be that guy. Vrabel's a little more interesting. Now, he's never had personnel control before, but he's obviously experienced and he's had a say in it. Would you give Mike Vrabel final say, or would you look for somebody else to have that power?
I'd prefer the GM to have final say as far as who they draft and like who they sign. Picking the players, I feel like that should be the GM's job, and the head coach should be able to, empower and trust the GM to do that. The head coach is the guy that has the vision, though. He's the guy that sort of pushes him in a certain direction and says, we need to have this certain kind of offense. We need to have these kinds of players. But does that mean that he should also go in there and pick the players himself? Like, I'm not sold on Vrabel being that guy. I think an ideal setup is that Vrabel has the vision. He's building the culture. He's setting the program, and the GM is there to sort of execute that vision. But the GM is the guy that picks the players, and ideally, Vrabel trusts that guy to do that. I think that's the ideal setup.
That, to me, is a bigger question than the coach. And I talked about this earlier. Who has final say? Who's running the draft room? Who's running free agency? That guy's going to make or break the future of this team a lot more than the head coach, one way or the other. I think that, and look, they're going to hire the coach first, so I understand why we're not talking about that right now. I got asked last week, why is nobody talking about Elliott Wolf? Gerard Mayo's getting all this criticism. Why is nobody talking about Elliott Wolf? And I said, because it's the regular season, people don't talk about the GM. The day the season ends, Elliott Wolf or whoever is in charge in that role becomes the face of the organization for the next 4 months. Drake May is, yes, a franchise quarterback. We're not seeing Drake May once a week for a while. He's back in North Carolina, I would assume, working with the quarterback's coach, right? We are going to hear, talk about whoever is building the roster quite a bit. That is the most important thing to me. Who is going to be in charge of that? And which players will they be picking? I think over the weekend, maybe a couple guys caught Patriots fans' interest. We'll get into that next here on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
Stay tuned for more Sunday Kickoff on the Sports Hub.
Just like the perfect suit, testosterone replacement therapy is not one size fits all. Learn how Wellesley Testosterone is translating cutting-edge research into personalized treatment. If precision is your priority, we're the team you trust. Visit WellesleyTestosterone.com.
Craving authentic Italian cuisine? R2 has been serving up mouthwatering classics in the North End since 1992. Just minutes from the Garden, R2 is the perfect place to dine and drink before and after the game. With the kitchen open until 12:45 and the stunning granite bar open until 2. Stop by 6 Prince Street or at artuboston.com today.
How do you know who to choose when you're looking to remodel your home's exterior? Do you go with the out-of-state home improvement franchise or the one that's owned by a private equity firm?
Neither, Hardy. You stay local and go with Beantown Home Improvements. Hey, this is Jim from Beantown Home Improvements. We specialize in roofing, siding, windows, doors, decks, and skylights. Give us a call today and get your home project done right the first time by a local company that cares. Call us at 44 Beantown to book an appointment today or check us out online at beantownhi.com.
Welcome to the Chevy Lightning Round. Guess the clues to win. First team, you're up.
Powerful, commanding, unstoppable.
Silverado.
Adventurous, fun, techie.
Trailblazer.
Stylish, nimble.
Trax.
Innovative, electric.
Blazer EV. Lightning Round champions. You've guessed all the right Chevy clues.
Wherever the year takes you, explore it together in the Chevy of your choice. Visit your New England Chevy dealers.
Life insurance. Why are you putting it off? Can't afford it? Too much hassle? Think you don't need it? There's lots of excuses for putting off life insurance. But if you weren't there, who would pay the mortgage and other bills? With Ethos, you could be covered in 10 minutes and boom, family protected. Ethos, fast and easy online term life insurance. Up to $2 million in coverage with no medical exam. Some policies as low as $1 a day. Answer a few health questions and get your free quote at getethos.com. That's getethos.com.
Downy Rinse and Refresh. Break up with...
That was the nail in the coffin on Saturday night in the playoff game between Ohio State and Texas. Jack Sawyer getting his former college roommate, an Ohio State transfer. Strip sack, picked it up, ran the other way on Quinn Ewers for the touchdown. Sawyer, the MVP of the Cotton Bowl. That was, I mean, a dominant performance from him, a guy I've talked about quite a bit over the last year as somebody I really like for the Patriots. And then you had Friday night in the Orange Bowl, another edge rusher, Abdul Carter, take that game over at times. It's number 11 for Penn State if you're watching at home. He was dominant. That was a breakout game for him. So, I mean, Patriots fans, I think, if they didn't already know, really introduced to these guys, even if they already knew them, getting a good example of what they can do. With Carter, I posted this on Twitter on Friday night. At what point does the question go from, is Will Carter the best option at 4 to, or not Carter, I combined the two of them.
Abdul Carter,
is Abdul
Will
Carter,
Johnson.
yeah. Is Abdul Carter the best option at 4? Does the conversation go from that to, will Abdul Carter be on the board at 4? Which I don't know if he will, but you could make a case that he's the safest pick in this draft. I don't know that his ceiling's as high as Travis Hunter, but it's close, and his development track's a lot easier than Hunter's is. Jack Sawyer, a little bit of a later pick, older guy, but he's probably going to go late first, early second. But you watch not just the way he played. He gives his team the fired up speech before the game. He's constantly in communication with coaching staff. He's helping make adjustments on that defense, things like that. Cornerstone kind of player, leadership kind of player. So I know everybody's looking at offense, and wants to see the Patriots hammer offense at the top of the draft. They need a pass rusher. They need somebody who can get after. They could not touch quarterbacks this year. So whether it's Abdul Carter at 4, whether it's Jack Sawyer at 38, or maybe in a trade up or something like that, everybody's talked about what a weak draft class this is. As a whole, yes, it's a little bit of a lesser class. The pass rush class is good. And I want to see the Patriots take advantage of that somewhere in the top 50.
Okay, so you're saying they don't necessarily need to take Abdul Carter at 4. If he's there, they could take Jack Sawyer, 33
If you ended up with like a tackle at the top of the draft, and maybe you even trade down a little bit, take one of those tackles, and then like you trade back up and get Sawyer, I'd feel pretty good about that. I would feel, and now you got to figure out what you're doing at wide receiver. Maybe that's a move in the veteran market, but like, don't sleep on the fact that and they're not similar players, or they're similar players, but they're not the same player. Carter's a much more physically dominant player than Sawyer is, but just watching the two of them and the way that those guys impacted the respective games. And Denis, I'm blanking on the name of the other Penn State pass rusher who was really good in that game as well, and it's like a top 100 pick. Looking at the way those guys impacted those games, boy, the Patriots need somebody who can turn up the heat on the quarterback, don't they? Yeah. Doesn't that feel like maybe not as big of a need as tackle, but like right there, like 1B, very close?
Well, that goes to my point about the tackles, where it's like, I don't think you necessarily need to have an all-pro left tackle. I think you need a good left tackle, at least a decent, serviceable guy. But your quarterback can sort of make up for that. It's hard to get by without at least a good pass rusher, a good edge rusher. You can scheme up some pressure, but at the end of the day, you need that sort of difference-making guy when it comes down to crunch time and those big moments in the game. Jack Sawyer proved to be that guy, at least for Ohio State the other night. And I love the scenario that you laid out where they go tackle and edge rusher. First 2 picks, however you shake it out. I think they need to improve in the trenches on both sides of the ball. I think they need to figure that out. Whether it's left tackle, right tackle, center might be a need for them. But edge rusher for sure. I don't think people should lose sight of that. I don't think they should run it back with what they have in the front 7. They need to get an edge rusher. Abdul Carter seems like I don't know if you want to call him like a blue chip type of prospect.
I think he's made it clear the last 2 games, really, that he's that guy.
Yeah, and so not a great draft overall, but top 10. It's hard to miss in the top 10 most years. You know what I mean? There's going to be good players at the top of the draft, so I'm leaning best non-quarterback available. If that's Abdul Carter, then go Abdul Carter. I'd be happy with that from what I've seen watching him play. I think he'd be a really good addition.
Yeah, I mean, he's the kind of player that can change a game. No doubt. And I don't know that Sawyer's quite that level, but he's a really good player, and he's also going to help you. We talked about this at the top of the show. He's going to be somebody that, he's going to be captain, right? Maybe not as a rookie, but he's going to be captain early on. He's going to be a leader, something like that. I know he's caught some flack for the brawl that happened after the Michigan-Ohio State game. And look, I don't love everything he did there, but also kind of the nastiness to start that when the opposing team trying to plant the flag in midfield. Like, don't the Patriots kind of need a guy like that? As Felger would say, like an a-hole, right?
Yeah.
On the field. Like,
I think Vrabel would be a fan of his. And likes the cut of his jib.
Ohio State guy. So it's funny, everybody's been comparing him to Mike Vrabel because they see mean, nasty edge rusher from Ohio State where Vrabel played and coached and all that. I actually think he's more Rob Ninkovich than Mike Vrabel as a player.
A better Rob Ninkovich or similar?
Ceiling's maybe a little bit better.
Yeah.
But if he ends up being Rob Ninkovich, who is a very solid player for 6-7 years here, if that's your second round pick, you did pretty good.
Yeah, Ninkovich was a guy that had a knack for coming up with big plays from time to time. I think people forget that about him.
And that's the other thing with Sawyer. He had, and they ended up losing, but he has the interception in that Michigan game, things like that. How long was... Oh, I undersold Ninkovich. He was here longer than I thought. But yeah, he was a good player. If you can get that guy in the second round, he had 8 sacks 3 years in a row.
Yeah. And to your receiver point, I like Ted McMillan, but I am just so terrified that the Patriots are going to remove his brain and replace it with an uncoordinated person's brain, and he is going to forget how to run and use his hands. I don't want them drafting a wide receiver.
No.
I need them to go out and get an established guy. Trade for DK Metcalf, sign T. Higgins, do something like that at wide receiver.
I'm with you 100%. It's got to be a veteran. I don't want to see him try to develop another receiver. I want to go through these calls real quick because you guys have been waiting, but it's going to be a lightning round. You got to be quick. Get the takeoff and go. Barry in New Bedford, good morning.
I'll be quick. If this was Elliott Wolf's decision, it's Ben Johnson because it's the McVay, it's the O'Connell. You hire those guys. This is all about the crafts and not going the pass. So that's why they're going to hire mediocre Mike, and they're going to bring in Josh. I can't hold it, John McDaniels. He'll be fired in 2 years and we're back here again because they'll go back to being they'll be going from a 4-win team back to being what they were the last 5 years of Belichick, a Midler.
Mediocre Mike could stick if things don't go well. Yeah, mediocre. I'll say this too. Elliott Wolf it's not just about the McVay thing. Elliott Wolf has an indirect connection. Elliott Wolf is in Green Bay with Joe Philbin, who Ben Johnson worked under for a while in Miami. So there is a more direct connection there than just, they want a new age guy. Don in Barrington on Mike Vrabel.
Good morning, guys.
Morning.
I think the scariest thing about all of this is the Robert Kraft wording yet again that he used the word quick. And so there was a report that came out yesterday that said that Johnson is not going to get a chance because he told the Krafts he'd like to go through another interview, and they want quick. And so, therefore, they're going to settle for Mike Vrabel when they should be patient because it's far more difficult, as you have just stated this morning, to find a good offensive coordinator than it is to find a defensive coordinator. There are tons that have just got fired, including the Robert Saleh, the guy from the Saints, Eberflus.
John, what's harder to find, a good offensive coordinator or a good head coach?
I think if you're a good offensive coordinator like Ben Johnson is in Detroit, they are fearful that he's leaving because he goes in every meeting. I think Ben Johnson is 100% the right head coach for this team, not Mike Vrabel.
All right, I'll just remind everybody this. You're hiring Ben Johnson to be the head coach, not the offensive coordinator. I've heard that argument quite a bit. It's really hard to find a good offensive coordinator, so just hire the head coach to be the offensive coordinator, but then who's head coaching your football team?
Yeah,
there's so much more that goes to it that he needs to be able to do.
Right, well, I think the caller is just assuming that Ben Johnson's going to be a great head coach, which is
right.
If you feel that way, that's fine, but I wouldn't make that assumption.
Mike McDaniel, Josh McDaniels, we've seen these guys, Matt Nagy.
Right, he said
it doesn't always carry over.
He said, sorry, before we go to the next caller, McVay, O'Connell. Yes, those two guys worked. Zach Taylor?
No. Zach Taylor probably should have lost his job. We don't even know. I really, really like Kevin O'Connell. It's been a year and a half. Let's not hold him up as some clear. McVay's the guy. If you're looking at Ben Johnson, ideally he becomes McVay. McVay's the one guy from that tree that's worked, but did he work because that's the right path, or is he a unicorn? Is he the exception to the rule compared to some of these other guys? Deshaun in Virginia, wrapping this up again. We got to go quick. Deshaun, good morning.
Yes. I just wanted to say that I most definitely agree with you guys when it comes to Abdul Carter. If they don't draft T. McMillan, which is my guy, but they don't draft T. Mac, then I want Abdul Carter. And also, too, I think it's very important for them to adjust the trenches because we look at those games. Most of those games were lost because they're so horrible. They're so horrendous in the trenches, on offensive line and defensive line. And also, I disagree with some of those callers talking about Mike Vrabel being mediocre or whatever because I think with him having the experience that he has as a head coach, he'll bring more stability. And also, I like the people that he's getting ready to bring along with him. The only thing we have to do is try to find an offensive coordinator, which is hard to do, but I think it's possible for it to happen. That's all I wanted to say.
All I hear about, Matt, is there's all these great offensive coaches all over the league. Like, look at, you got to hire Ben Johnson. Look at this great coach and that great coach and that great coach. But then in the same breath, people say, and it's impossible to find a good offensive coach, so you have to hire Ben Johnson. Which one is it? Or are they just done making offensive coaches? Is every coach from here on out only going to coach defensive ends and that's it? Every football coach from now until the end of time will only coach defensive ends. The offensive coach factory is shut down.
I think the McVay's success has sort of infected the league, and they're still going with this.
It's a copycat league.
Anyone who has been in the same room as Sean McVay deserves to get a head coaching job. I just feel like that's a mistake. I think Kevin O'Connell is a good head coach. He's done a good job there with the Vikings. I think McVay is going to beat him on Monday night. Sorry for the spoiler later when we make our picks. He's going to lose to Sean McVay tomorrow night. So I think the whole idea is a little overrated. I think we're going to have, sort of a balance of offensive and non-offensive coaches in the divisional round. I don't think you have to absolutely have an offensive-minded head coach. I think McVay's success has sort of created a sort of mind virus.
All right, let's get to those picks. We got to hit the headlines, 90 seconds, no commercials. Then we go around the league next here on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
From the Town Fair Tire Studios, this is Boston's home for sports.
Zaka cross, they scored. Porzingis, point a shot, rebound, score.
WBZFM and HD Boston 98.5, the Sports Hub. Media Group Station. Sports Hub headlines.
The Patriots coaching search now a week in. According to multiple reports last night, the team has entered contract negotiations with Mike Vrabel to take over that job. Some reports also indicating Josh McDaniels could follow him as the offensive coordinator. Meanwhile, the NFL playoffs roll on. It is wild card weekend. 2 games yesterday. The Texans beat the Chargers 32-12, and the Ravens beat the Steelers 28-14. 3 games today. The Broncos take on the Bills at 1 o'clock. At 4:30, it's the Packers visiting the Eagles. And then at 8, the Commanders take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tomorrow night in the wild card finale, the Vikings visit the Rams. That game will be played in Arizona due to the fires in Los Angeles. The Bruins picked up a win yesterday, beating the Florida Panthers 4-3 in overtime. David Pastrnak scored the game winner. Jeremy Swayman made 40 saves in the win. Meanwhile, the Celtics are in action tonight at home against the New Orleans Pelicans. Coverage begins at 5:30 right here on 98.5 The Sports Hub. Sports Hub headlines are brought to you by Safety Insurance, providing comprehensive coverage for your auto, home, and business. Ask your independent agent about safety. I'm Alex Barth on Boston's Home for Sports, 98.5 The Sports Hub. Your next update at 10 o'clock.
No matter where you go, you're always connected to Boston sports with the 98.5 The Sports Hub app. Download it wherever you get your apps today. You're listening to Sunday Kickoff with Alex Barth and Saron Battle on your station for the best football coverage. 98.5 The Sports Hub.
Pick a target.
You pick it.
Take your pick.
Pick me! Pick me!
I did not pick. There was no pick.
Pick him up. You pick him up.
Pick.
I pick.
Pick me, pick me, pick me.
Pick the teams.
Pick one, jerk.
Alrighty then, it's Alex Barth and Matt Dolloff. Kyle Fabrizio behind the glass here on a wild card edition of Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. The season may be over, regular season, but we still go around the league in the playoffs. We can get a little more into these games now, too, that we don't have to run through 16 of them. Get a little more in depth. Not too much to get in depth with this game, though, between the Chargers and the Texans starting off last night.
Reminded of Sir Andrew Barton. Fight on, my men, Sir Andrew said. I'm a little wounded but not slain. I'll lay down and bleed a while, and we'll rise and fight again.
A little wounded. They lost 32-12, Scorigami, by the way.
Yes.
In a game that they got kind of a random 86-yard touchdown from Ladd McConkey late. That felt like it was a long time coming for the Chargers, Dolph.
Right. Well, how about that? A defensive coach won a game. How did DeMeco Ryans possibly win that game against the offensive guru, Jim Harbaugh? How is that possible?
I will say that the Houston offense didn't look great at times. C.J. Stroud still doesn't look totally right to me.
He's regressed, and I don't know if I forget, we might have talked about this off the air. They've had Bobley Slowick there for a few years. He's been a head coach candidate, so to your point about the continuity. But yeah, C.J. Stroud kind of regressed, and maybe the head coach talk has kind of quieted down on Bobby Slowick.
How do you feel about Justin Herbert?
Oh, I think he's a good. The talent is up there, but he's just not. He's not going to come through in the big moments. He's just not that guy. I thought maybe Jim Harbaugh could bring a little more out of them, but Jim Harbaugh can't make the Chargers not the Chargers. That ultimately proved true.
Look, you know I'd love to rip on Brandon Staley. He's not there anymore. He's not there anymore. You can't blame him. That was a rough performance from the Chargers. One more final from last night. The Ravens and the Steelers.
Big trust. Woo, woo. Lamar Jackson in the flesh.
Big trust indeed. Jackson was excellent last night. Derrick Henry was awesome last night. That was some AFC North bully ball football. That one drive they had early on, 13 plays, all runs, ending in a touchdown. That I felt something watching that drive, Dolph. That was awesome.
The Ravens' offensive line kind of dominated that game. Talk about giving Derrick Henry lanes. It's like they laid the train tracks out right there on the field for him to just run straight to the end zone.
I still think the Ravens are coming out of the AFC. That team, and we'll see. Lamar was grabbing his back last night. He looked a little shaken up, so we'll see where he's at. But
how is John Harbaugh possibly in the divisional round? He's not an offensive-minded head coach, Barth. How is that possible?
That offense looked pretty good. I'll tell you that. That offense looked pretty good. That team is built for playoff football. How are you going to stop a team running like that in the cold?
The Patriots have to hire Todd Monken, Barth. That's my guy.
Well, they don't have close to the offensive line, and nobody's close to the running back that the Ravens do. But and I said it, I was in here after Christmas talking about the Christmas Day games. I remember everybody was so shocked by how bad the Texans lost on Christmas Day. If you go back and you remember that, they got blown out. And Houston's so fraudulent. Houston's so fraudulent. I remember coming in here saying, I don't disagree, but they weren't the biggest fraud on Christmas. It was the Pittsburgh Steelers, and we saw that last night. What a fraudulent playoff team that was. I would have much rather seen the Bengals last night than the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, they are just stuck in that no man's land where, how are they going to get a franchise quarterback, a true franchise quarterback? How are they going to get to that next level? Just stuck in that, we'll sneak into the wild card and we'll lose.
Don't you want to be the Steelers, though, Dolph? Isn't that what you want to aspire to be?
No, I do not want to aspire
you don't?
to be that.
Right.
I don't agree with tanking, but I see the reality that you have to get talent in the top half of the first round of the draft in order to turn your franchise around. I see the reality that needs to happen at some point.
All right, on to today. We start in the 1 o'clock window with the Broncos and the Bills. This is, again, where I'd love to see the Bengals. We know the Bengals can give the Bills a game. Instead, it's Bo Nix and company, 8.5-point underdogs going into Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, I think these 2-7 games are just pretty much useless. I don't see the
Who asked for a seventh team in the playoffs?
I mean, the Broncos rookie quarterback, they're like the 2021 Patriots. They backed into the playoffs with a rookie quarterback. The Chiefs basically let them win in Week 18 to keep the Bengals out of the playoffs. That's my conspiracy theory. I think that's pretty fair to say. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe Sean Payton pulls a couple plays out of his patoot, but I don't see them having a chance against the Bills.
I don't think so either. I don't know if they cover. Look, you said it's like the 2021 Patriots. Rookie quarterback, good offensive line, great defense. How did that season end again for the 2021 Patriots?
Oh, boy.
Josh Allen into Buffalo. Now, the Broncos aren't going to be missing their entire defense due to COVID, so that should make it a little bit closer. But I think the Bills win and cover this one. Bills-Ravens next week. That could be a lot of fun.
That could be the game of the year.
That could be the game of the year. I think it'll be better than whichever team plays the Chiefs, who obviously have the bye this weekend. Let's go to the NFC. Also, real quick, how do you feel about this since we have more time here? They're playing all 3 AFC games and all 3 NFC games. Mix it up. Yeah, I don't know why. It bugs me.
I honestly just assumed that last night was going to be Washington and Tampa, because they mix up the conferences. That was a little weird. Today's the,
back when this was a proper league and you had 4 playoff games this weekend, it was always like one conference played the first and last game and the other 2 were sandwiched in the middle. Give me back that. But we go to the NFC portion of the schedule. Boy, I will say, if we want traditional, like what I grew up with, NFL football, is there anything more traditional NFL? Does anything put you back in your parents' house, coming in from shoveling the snow, all that, than a Packers-Eagles playoff game at 4:30 on Fox?
Jalen Hurts is a winner. He's a winner. He wins, right?
The only thing this game is missing nostalgia-wise will be Buck and Aikman, but I would assume this is Brady's game. Yeah, this is Brady's game. So that'll be good. The Eagles 5.5-point favorites at home.
Yeah, that has a chance to be the game of the weekend. I think this is the closest thing to an evenly matched team in terms of their rosters and the coaches.
It is not the smallest line of the weekend, though.
Yeah,
believe it or not.
Well, yeah, I see the night game having a smaller line, but I like the Eagles. I think the experience there is going to play into their favor. I think the Packers are going to flame out again. And then, maybe Matt Floor is going to be looked at a little bit if they flame out today, especially.
I don't think it's going to be ugly, but I do think the Eagles win. I think this will be a close game. It'll be a good game. But Packers on the road, they've struggled in the playoffs like this. Give me the Eagles tonight. Final game tonight. We have the Commanders at the Bucks.
Bring the joy back to football a little bit for guys that weren't having as much fun.
Oh, that was Baker on Brady, right? They're like boys now, though. Brady's interviewing him after all these games, so hatchet buried, I guess. Bucks 3.5-point favorites against the Commanders.
Yeah, I honestly like the Commanders in this one. I look at the Commanders, want to compare teams from yesteryear. I compare these Commanders to the Texans last year.
Okay.
Where C.J. Stroud comes out and has his big coming out party, and he doesn't know any better except to just go out there and sling it, and he has one of the games of his life. I foresee Jaden Daniels doing something similar. And I know that Baker Mayfield has had his share of, big games. They've had some, close shootout type of games. So I could see a game like that happening. But I like the Commanders with their dynamic rookie quarterback and a more experienced head coach there.
Shootout's a good way to put it. Look, if you are a rookie quarterback making your first playoff start on the road, no offense to Buccaneers fans, but there's definitely worse places you can go than Tampa. I would expect a good Washington contingent at this game.
Barth, again, how are 2 defensive-minded coaches possibly in a playoff game right now?
I feel like there's a through line here
possible?
with all these picks. I'm going to go with Tampa, though. I think Baker makes one more play late than Jaden Daniels does to win the game. And then tomorrow night, because we're doing, again, I hate to be an old man yelling at a cloud, but Monday night playoff football, there's no need for it, but it is happening. This game is in Arizona due to the LA fires. It is the Vikings at the Rams.
Once you tease me, you're going. He's a war daddy.
2 offensive coaches in this one, so you have to make a pick, Dolloff. Vikings 2.5-point favorites, air quotes, on the road.
Yeah, I teased it before. I like the Rams. I do believe in the whole thing, we're going to play for our city. I do believe in that sort of giving a team an extra boost. Not saying that's why they're going to win. I think they have the more experienced coach and quarterback. And I think the Vikings have sort of fizzled out here. They didn't have a good end of the season there, and it should have been the biggest game of the regular season, and they sort of fizzled out there. I think Sam Darnold is sort of, finding his level. And so I take Stafford and McVay over O'Connell and Darnold. I don't think, the Vikings roster or Brian Flores are going to make enough of a difference. I'd take the Rams.
I think Brian Flores might be the difference against a veteran quarterback like Matthew Stafford.
It would be fun.
I think he dials it up. I think O'Connell gets him going. I've been a believer in that program all year, so I will stick with them. And then the buys are the Chiefs and the Lions. We'll see them next week, and that is the wild card slate. We got Andrew Callahan of the Boston Herald joining us. That's next here on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
Is on the way on the Sports Hub.
structure of the organization, and I would have a lot of questions if I was Mike Vrabel before I took this job, and I wonder if there's a lot more that he's not really cognizant of. You know, we've heard that he wants to be here in New England and this is the spot and everything like that, but I do wonder if some of that is history of being here when Bill Belichick had this thing rolling and it was buttoned up in a real organization, because, man, some of the stuff that's in this article would give me real pause if I was taking over the organization as the head coach. The first one is something that we've known for a long time, which was that the candidates for offensive coordinator last year were unimpressed by the questions and the process that took place. The second thing is the Elliott Wolf stuff in here. And then the third thing is that there's a rumor spread inside the building that ownership ordered Jelani Tavai to be benched for his comments that incited an already angry fan base, they write. So if I'm a head coach, I'm now getting orders from ownership about who should play and who shouldn't.
Behind the curtain, as it were, of the 2024 Patriots, from Andrew Callahan and Doug Hyde. Andrew Callahan joins us now. Talk about that, the Patriots coaching search, and so much. That implies there's some other wild card. I was just being like, kind of, get off my lawn complaining about the 6 games and the Monday night games.
It's the super duper ultra mega wild card weekend.
I miss my good old wild card weekend, Andrew. I miss classic way. Like, what was it called when Coke changed the recipe, then went back? Coke, New Coke, and then Coke Classic.
Crystal Coke, or what? That was Pepsi, I think.
Yeah,
I think Dolloff is getting into something extra with the Crystal Coke. But yeah, we're talking soda here. Maybe Coke One, Coke Classic, something like that. But isn't it funny, fellas, how whether it's a football team or the league at large, they love to trial balloon these things in the public, and largely how the public reacts is kind of dictates how they do business.
It really is. That's a good point, and that kind of gets to where I wanted to start. Again, you and Doug Hyde did a great job, as you guys do every year, with this kind of look behind the curtain piece at the end of the Patriots season. I'm just curious for you going through it this year, right? You've done this the last few years with Bill Belichick, but this season was so unique. Just without, I know you can't get into too much and give away sources and things like that, but how different was it going through this project this year, given kind of the way this Patriots season went?
Yeah, it's a good question, Alex. And this is not, nice guy lip service. You guys both know Doug very well and how hard he works. Like that piece that we did, just like last year, is impossible without him. So a lot of the stuff that you heard in that clip coming back in here and that we'll discuss possibly, or even just read in the piece doesn't get done without Doug. And I want that known up front as much as I'm the guy talking to you right now on the radio. Secondarily, of course you hear things throughout the year, and people go, why don't you report it right away? Well, first of all, you got to confirm everything, and everything that we had in that piece was independently confirmed by a second person, a third person, sometimes a fourth person, to make sure it is rock solid. And so as you gather that kind of info or the rumors, things that you're hearing, it was just strange this year, fellows, with a lot of just uncertainty. And there was some that I talked to in the building that said, honestly, because when I had asked, hey, was the last month a little bit more stressful? They felt like, I've been dealing and living this way for the last 12 to 14 months. And, again, as you hear certain things like that, I never contemplated oh, yeah, of course, Bill last year struggling. He didn't know what the Crafts were going to do. And in that process, some folks also don't want to talk until the season is over. So I might have an inkling about what the answer might be, but they don't want to share anything in season that might be negative about the team. Once the season is over, they're like, I don't know my future here. And as we started to gather everything, confirm things that we had heard, it was just an uncertainty about Gerard's vision. And then by the end of the season, looking up in ownership, being like, is this really what we're doing?
Andrew, I want to ask you about the wide receiver room. They took up a chunk of your story, and I think, no single position group on the team with more dysfunction, in my opinion. And yes, they obviously need players there, but I think the problems, based on that story, go well beyond the players. I think the coaching and development was lacking there, and the room was out of control. I think everyone agrees that they need to go out and get some receivers, but how aggressive do you think they should be in terms of who's coaching the receivers, who's developing them? Because I think, something really needs to change as far as how they're building that position group and developing them.
Yeah, I say based on the results on the field, you could have read this story and not felt this way, and I think it would have been fair. Just a complete overhaul is due. And it's not like they have any albatross contracts there for the players. I do think it was a very immature room. It's hard to get a hold on guys in the draft that the Patriots selected and had some red flags for certain teams character-wise, and that showed up. Or are going to mouth off to the media. And it's one thing to criticize the play calling or want the ball more. That's kind of being a receiver. But when you don't have the resume or the standing in the league to say, oh yeah, I shouldn't have to ask for the ball, and guys are still saying that, you're like, who do you think you are? So I just think, as Elliott Wolf said on the record to Fox Sports, he didn't expect the development to go like this. He thought it would be much better. maybe the talent was what he thought it was. And then you have the players who obviously thought a little bit too much of themselves. So I don't see you look in that room, and unless Jalen Polk becomes a player most of us pre-draft expected him to be, just a solid number 2 receiver, that there are any foundational pieces. So including the coaching, as you mentioned, the lack of development, you could see a total overhaul in the next, 12 to 18 months.
Again, we're talking to Andrew Callahan from the Boston Herald. Leading that overhaul will be the next head coach. It certainly seems like things are trending towards Mike Vrabel. What's the latest you've heard? And really the timeline. Robert Kraft said in that press conference on Monday he wanted to move quick. 24 hours, 48 hours. How much longer do you think until this thing is resolved?
Yeah, guys, I would be surprised if it's longer than 48 hours. And I'll say this, it's not based in any intel. But when you ask some people around the league, and this isn't like, I surveyed all 31 other franchises, just some folks that are kind of in the know, they thought it might have been done today or yesterday or the day before. And just because this has been the expectation from the outside looking in for a while. Now, when you go, is it not done in 24 hours or 48 hours? Is it a problem? Maybe. I don't know. Or because we know how, I want to say, sensitive this team is to optics, a la the Aaron Glenn interview 48 hours after they requested the other coordinator for the Lions, maybe they're just waiting and they're doing the league a solid. Say, hey, you can break your news. Just don't do it during mega super duper wild card weekend. Just wait a little bit. So I'm not going to read into the timing, but I expect this to be done soon. Reportedly, they've entered into the contract negotiations according to the NFL Network, which to me, fellas, that tells you basically everything you need to know.
Andrew, I'm curious where you stand on the philosophy of the head coach, who they hire. It sounds like it's going to be Vrabel, but you're seeing a lot of discourse of that it's a mistake simply because he's defensive-minded, and they need to hire an offensive-minded head coach. Just where do you stand on that? Because I think Sean McVay's success has sort of created this kind of mind virus where you have to hire this guy simply because he's an offensive-minded head coach and he's been in the same room as Sean McVay. I just think teams sort of go too far with that, and I think head coach is more than just being offensive-minded, but I'm curious where you stand on that.
Mind virus. Matt, with your permission, I will be stealing that sometime in the near future in a column for the Boston Herald. I like that term.
Yes, CC Matt Dolloff, yep.
Please credit 98.5 The Sports Hub. You'll see it at the bottom. No, I think it's a fair point, but I don't think it's so much from this guy did it, we all have to do it the same way. What you do if you hire a successful offensive head coach is you do not risk losing that person to another job because they're already your head coach. So if you have someone like McVay who can clearly develop quarterbacks, can clearly run an offense, which is the most attractive skill set in coaching in the National Football League, you just get to keep that guy. What I would say is when it comes to Vrabel, though, the reason you hire Mike Vrabel now as the Patriots is not because of the player that he was. It's because of the coach he's become. Last year in Cleveland, for example, he's in the offensive line room. He's in the tight ends room. He's working in the front office. In Tennessee, he won the third highest percentage of games of any head coach when he was an underdog. That's a team that punched above its weight without a great roster, certainly without a great quarterback. He's been a head coach before, or he just had a winning record. To me, I understand the longer we wait, people fill time either on the hub or in the paper like me and kind of outthink themselves. He's the best candidate. He's the best candidate for this job where the Patriots need culture and discipline and experience. And he also hires offensive coordinators. So, yeah, ideally you would love Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel to share a brain, to have the same mind viruses. But ultimately, Vrabel's a better candidate, in my opinion, and it's not to do with the defensive versus offensive stuff. It's just who he is and who he's always been.
Before we let you go, Andrew, the last point, and I opened the show talking about this, the head coaching hire is important, but to me, as if not more important, is who's going to be making sure that coach has the talent to succeed here and who gets final say. Robert Kraft kind of left that one open-ended when we talked to him on Monday. Do you think there's a chance Vrabel could get that power and essentially be like Belichick, the de facto GM? Do you think it could go back to Elliott Wolf, or do you think we'll see somebody else in here running player personnel?
Yeah, I would leave two options on the table. One, actually, let's make it three. Number one is, Elliott Wolf stays atop the front office. I don't have percentages for this. I'm just going to tell you, don't completely take that off the table for now. Number two, Mike Vrabel brings in his own guy. We heard a year ago, Ryan Cowden, a Titans executive, who's going to go to him with him to L.A. if he took the Chargers job, and Elliott Wolf takes a demotion. Number three, Ryan Cowden, or pick your executive from the outside, comes in with Mike Vrabel, and Elliott Wolf is gone. And I would argue, as much as everyone's been disappointed by Wolf's last year, basically in year one of a rebuild, which is designed to reset the roster, the front office is an example of where this franchise needs to add and not subtract. They need more resources in there. They need more experienced minds. It can't be as it was Bill and Caserio, and then Dave Ziegler and Matt Groh and Bill, and then it was Matt Groh and Belichick, and now it's just Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith and Pat Stewart. Like, you need more minds in there, period. I think Elliott Wolf is an experienced, solid executive, and that's from GMs I talked to around the league last year to do a profile on him and people he worked with. So those are the three options I would see. I don't think Mike Vrabel gets total power, but Elliott Wolf's future could go in any number of directions.
He is Andrew Callahan. He covers the Patriots for the Boston Herald. Check out him and Doug Kyde's story on kind of the peek behind the curtain of the Gerard Mayo era. You guys did a fantastic job on that, and looking forward to hearing more from you guys throughout this offseason. Thanks for joining us.
You got it. Hopefully see you guys at a press conference this week.
Hopefully. Good stuff there from Andrew, I thought, Matt, and you might make an appearance in the paper there. So how about give yourself a little pat on the back?
Yes, that would be great. Credit 98.5 The Sports Hub, Matt Dolloff.
Good stuff by you. All right, we'll get back to the coaching search next. You want to call in thoughts on Mike Vrabel, thoughts on Ben Johnson, 617-779-0985 as we keep it going here on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
More Sunday Kickoff coming up on the Sports Hub.
The Celtics tip off tonight at 6.
to pull him away from New England. But he's the one guy right now who is going to have multiple opportunities. Interviewing with the Bears today. Saints want to talk to him. Jets have talked to him. Raiders presumably will want to. It's everybody but the Jaguars so far have been linked to him in one way, shape, or form. And at the end of the day, he'll know in his heart whether he wants to go to New England despite the things that happened with Belichick. And I could see Vrabel compartmentalizing it. I could see Vrabel smoothing things over with Bill. If Bill's nose is out of joint, how dare you take that job and go to New England when I was there all those years. And Vrabel's he's got a lot of Parcells in him where he'll make his point in a very blunt way, but it's also kind of a charming and funny way. And he's good with people in that respect. And I think that he'll manage Belichick and he'll go where he feels like he should go. And it just seems like a no-brainer for him to go to New England. But how many times have we seen no-brainers that just blow up and go a different direction?
That seems like the way things are heading. Alex Barth, Matt Dolloff here on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. Wrapping things up. We got another 20 minutes till Matt McCarthy comes in. So if you want to call in about the Patriots coaching search, 617-779-0985. Let's go to Paulie in the truck on the coaching search. Paulie.
Barthy, old boy.
What's going on?
One of my main targets over there. I love you, kid, man. You know your stuff.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, but Vrabel's, Vrabel's a guy you really gotta go with the experience, the stability that'll bring. Of course, coming along with McDaniels, nobody's gonna poach him. He's gonna stay here. He's gonna want to stay here. I think he's done, bouncing around like a ping pong ball. He just wants. He's in Westwood. He's been waiting for the call for over a year now. We should already be offensive coordinator. Maybe Mayo would still have his job, but Gerard, my God, they gave him every opportunity to stay on, and I think, and I theorize that they had designs to perhaps move the pieces around the chessboard. They had to make room for Mike. This was not an opportunity that presents itself every day. Guys like him don't grow on trees. You cut those guys, you cut Vrabel, you cut Mayo, you cut Josh McDaniels. They all bleed Patriot red, white, and blue. Mayo could have provided that bridge to the front office, but when he came in, the last 10 days from losing, getting blown up by San Diego, removed, to allowing the players to mouth off to the press and to the fans, given the appearance that the inmates are on the asylum, and then ended up with that terrible business decision, which basically to win that game against Buffalo, which effectively blew a mile-long hole in our supply line. That was it. They turned on a dime. Like they said, they moved fast. They looked at each other upstairs. They were already probably ready to move the pieces around. They looked at each other and they said, "There's nothing we can do." And I'm looking at them on the sidelines myself, and I hung in with Mayo right to the end and say, "My man, there's nothing we can do for you now." As I felt the heat coming up the back of my neck, midway through that fourth quarter, and I realized we weren't going to win that game. Well, there was nothing they had left to do with him but hit him. All right,
thanks for the call, Paulie. He brings up kind of an interesting point there about, it doesn't come along the opportunity to hire a guy like Mike Vrabel every year, which is true. Did come along last year, but they had it in Gerard Mayo's contract that he was the next guy, and so they moved. Let's say that hadn't been in Mayo's contract, and he had, I know they put that in there because he was going to go somewhere else, but all the same, he was here, but that clause wasn't in his contract. Kraft still likes him, all of that, but he is free to either promote Gerard Mayo or hire Mike Vrabel. What do you think they would have done last year if they had the freedom to choose?
I think Mayo just won Kraft over. That was years in the making them the head coach. Even if it wasn't, literally in his contract, I feel like that was, maybe even if it wasn't literally written in his contract, it might have been some sort of handshake agreement or whatever. In retrospect, obviously the right move would have been promote Gerard Mayo to defensive coordinator.
Right.
Take that over for, Steve Belichick, take over that whole defensive operation and bring in Mike Vrabel to be the head coach. That would have been a much, much better plan. That would have been the right plan. But I think Gerard Mayo just sort of got in Kraft's ear. The infamous trip to Israel. And, he ended up working it into his contract, which sort of locked him in. And I'm not convinced that even if it wasn't locked in, I think that it was sort of like a handshake, under the table sort of promise that he was going to be the guy. I think he was going to be the guy.
So we've talked a lot about...
And that was his mistake, by the way, was promising this job well in advance.
Writing that in. And he admitted that. He admitted that in the press conference on Monday. We talked a lot about the coaching conversation, but as I've said a couple times, and I cannot hammer this point enough, Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson, Gerard Mayo, Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn, Byron Leftwich, Bill Belichick, I don't care. None of those coaches are going to succeed without better talent. That is the top of the list this offseason. The Patriots need an influx of talent. Any coaching hire they make will flop without better players on the roster.
Absolutely.
Looking ahead to this offseason.
Yep.
We do the big three needs all the time, and I think it's pretty clear: tackle, receiver, edge rusher. But what should they be prioritizing? What should be at the top of that list? You can add one blue chip player, and they need to add more than one. But you can add one blue chip player to this roster. What needs to be the one non-negotiable? We will pay any amount. We will draft as high as we need. We need to get this hole filled. What is that position in your mind?
I still say left tackle, and I know that I've been saying that you don't need the best left tackle in the league, but it can't go unaddressed. You can't run it back with Valerian Lowe and what they've been going. You can't say, oh, well, we got Caden Wallace. We'll move him to left tackle. We tried him there already. We're confident in it. No. You can't do that. You have to address left tackle before anything else. And, yes, wide receiver, you need that. You need to maybe invest more money, get a higher-end talent according to the position. But left tackle, they need to figure that out because they've been chasing it for years, and it's high time that they just figure that out and get something established.
Well, I think to your take, too, about, you don't need a great offensive line. You don't need all pros across the board. And I agree with you across the board. But if you can get a linchpin left tackle, everything else up front becomes a lot easier.
Yes.
So now you can get by. If you have, if you draft Kelvin Banks or you draft Will Campbell, one of those guys becomes a top 5 tackle in the league, right? Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowler, even just borderline All-Pro kind of player, right? Well, now, all right, you can probably get by giving Cole Strange a shot at center after David Andrews retires. Well, now, yeah, you have a little more time and flexibility to figure out what you're doing at left guard, and maybe, Leighton Robinson needs a year to develop. You have that flexibility. At right tackle, well, you have the left side taken care of, so you can start sliding things that way. You don't need blue chippers across the line. I do think you need one linchpin, and if you're going to have a linchpin on the line, it really should be at left tackle. So I'm with you. That is the one position, especially after everything we went through last year, and even if Elliott Wolf is not in charge, if he's still here and all that, the press conference he gave in August about we believe in the offensive line, to have the product be what it was, they can't miss. They can't do what ifs. They can't throw things against the wall, see what sticks at left tackle anymore. I covered this team for 7 years. I've never once covered an offseason where we weren't talking about what are they going to do at left tackle. That's insane for what a premium position that is. They cannot afford another roll of the dice there. If Elliott Wolf loses final say power, which we'll see what happens. If he does, to me, you want to talk about the wide receivers in the draft? Fine. You want to talk about what happened with the lack of depth on defense? Fine. If Elliott Wolf loses full say power, to me, it should be more about what happened with the offensive line than anything else. Because that was, for a rookie quarterback, it did not need to be as bad as it was last year. They were comfortable being as bad as it was. I can't tell you why. There was no reason for it. They need to show they've learned their lesson on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been saying, even this past season, if they just had a true number one receiver for Drake May and a reliable left tackle, that alone would have made, I think, a big difference. And just to go back to the coaching point, I'm just trying to make this point that, my fear with Vrabel is that they say, well, he'll just turn the defense around and then we'll be fine. My fear with Ben Johnson is that they're going to expect him to make chicken salad out of chicken bleep with what they have on offense. That's my fear. To your point, no matter who the coach is, you're going to have to get talent, even on their side of the ball. You need to get talent on both sides of the ball.
Both sides need investment, and it's not going to be a 1 year thing. It should be significantly better, but you're not going to fix it all in 1 year. This is a 2 to 3 year project. We've known that. They've got to. They need to show patience, and they need to be strategic about it. You need to prioritize, right? So they need another coverage linebacker. They missed Mac Wilson bad this year. They need a guy who can play on third downs, play next to Juwan Bentley, things like that. Is that a need? Absolutely. Should that need be prioritized this offseason? Not over left tackle, not over receiver, not over getting a pass rusher, probably not over safety. Like, they really need a good deep safety. You saw the difference that some of those guys made. A guy like Derwin James, the difference that he made last night or yesterday afternoon.
Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah.
Baltimore, yeah.
That's, and look how much better their defense got when they sort of moved him back. That's what, like, it's going to be done in stages, but there's certain things they need to prioritize this offseason. Left tackle's absolutely one of them. All right, we're going to step away here real quick. We'll be back. We'll wrap it up next here on the Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff.
Stay tuned for more Sunday Kickoff on the Sports Hub.
This is Sean Grandy, voice of the Celtics. Tune in tonight at 5:30 for Star Market Celtics Tonight, and check out the Star Market app. Earn rewards and save on your groceries and gas with Star Market for you. Download the Star Market app today. Go shopping, get rewarded. Star Market, the official supermarket of the Boston Celtics radio network. Ever wish you could be a world champion like the Boston Celtics? Well, even if that's not in the cards, you can use the same corporate card as the Celtics. Meet Brex, the official corporate card of the Boston Celtics. Brex is the world's smartest corporate card, trusted by over 25...
Things up here on Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff. It's Alex Barth. We got Matt Dolloff in for Cerrone Battle this morning. Matt McCarthy and Leroy Irvin coming up next. They will be the lucky ones who get to break the coaching hire, I would bet.
Yeah,
I remember
10:07 is my pick. That's like the over-under.
That's a good number. I remember last year, so I usually stay and hang out. I don't know why. I just I do the show. I'm kind of focused. I'm kind of invested. So I don't get to do it during football season, but during the off season, I'll hang out. I'll do, stay for an hour or two, just get some work done because I'm in that mode. And what was it last year? I go down to my car, come back up, boom, Mac Jones traded. And I think there was something else too, where it was like that, like within 10 minutes of the show ending, we got some major news, but I don't remember what it was. But yeah, so
you remember I was cursed for a long time. I would step in the second I step out of the building.
It's all curse. Well, now you lived. We made sure you moved close to the office, so
yeah, I live close by her. That's be hard for that to happen.
But if I don't know how long this show will be relevant for. I mean, I think most of it's still relevant. Like we talked a lot about Vrabel. We didn't do too many hypotheticals on the search itself. So if you missed any of the show, you can find it on the Sports Hub YouTube page. Also, Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff, wherever you get your podcasts. We also have the Sports Hub Patriots podcast, which you can find Sports Hub Patriots audio feed.
Plenty of coverage coming on Monday, regardless of what happens.
Yeah, me and Matt do that during the week. So whenever they make the coaching hire, we're planning to do one pretty quick. So if you subscribe there, you subscribe on YouTube, we'll go there as well. So you're taking 10:07. So Andrew said, when we had Andrew Callahan on earlier, talked about, the speed of the search and maybe the league being involved. I can't imagine the league wants this dropped during like a playoff game. So I would think if it doesn't happen this morning, we're not getting it till tomorrow. This isn't me reporting anything. I don't know. It's just kind of me guessing. I'm thinking it either happens by 11:30 noon. Yeah. At that point,
late morning tomorrow makes sense.
Right. And either really late night tonight, maybe it's reported like halftime of the 8 o'clock game, one of those things. But if not, I think maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point about I don't think it's going to be dated. I think the Mike Vrabel versus Ben Johnson thing is going to be a debate that goes on all season.
So, all right. So let me ask you this. It's a good point. And beyond this season, probably. Where do you think Ben Johnson goes if it's not New England? Because if you're the Patriots, you want to hope he goes to a not-so-good organization that's going to set him up to fail, whether that be the Bears or we don't know what the Raiders are like now because with Tom Brady pulling the strings.
Right, well, I mean, yeah, Brady, but where is he going to go that's not a bad organization, if we're being honest? I'm leaning Bears because they have the quarterback and he has a lot of established offensive talent. He's not going to have to build up the roster too much in that regard. And so I think I would say Chicago if he doesn't end up the surprise move coming here. But yeah, honestly, Ben Johnson going to the Bears, Raiders, Jaguars, the Jets. That is a risk I'm willing to take.
He's not going to the Jets. The Jets are going to interview 50 more people and then probably hire Adam Gase or something.
I have an interview with the Jets later today. Did I tell you?
Oh, I'll see you there. I'm probably right after you. I'm later this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm flying out right after the show.
Are you? Okay, yeah, I'm 5 o'clock, so we'll miss each other. But if you're Adam Gase, would you rather work with Caleb Williams
Gase.
or for Adam Gase? Jeez. If you're Ben Johnson, would you rather work with Caleb Williams or for Tom Brady?
I'm leaning quarterback on that one. I get that Tom Brady is Tom Brady, but he's new to being an owner. I could see him being a guy that can attract talent. He could probably be a good recruiter. Probably better to put him at the front of the table than Mark Davis, I would say.
I would say so.
But he's new to the whole thing. I think Ben Johnson wants to have a quarterback that he can work with and talent, and that's why I'm still leaning Chicago.
Matt McCarthy, when is your interview with the Jets for their head coaching position? What time are you?
It's on Monday. I've got a busy weekend. No, wait, sorry. Today's Sunday. It's on Tuesday.
It's on Tuesday?
Sham interview.
Not if me or Matt blow him away. So we got Matt McCarthy, Leroy Irvin coming up next. You got to do the show. That's why you can't go down to New York today.
You're right.
Interview for the Jets head coaching job.
Well, I mean, they need to blow me away. I mean, this is a pretty good gig I've got here. I don't know if you guys would agree or disagree with that, but I get to come in and talk sports. That's probably better than running the New York Jets. But every man has their price.
Well, it's going to be a pretty good gig when you get the head coaching story 10 minutes after we get off the air, which I can totally see coming. So it's Matt McCarthy, it's Leroy Irvin. They've got you next. Thanks, everybody who tuned in. Again, you missed any of the show, Sports Hub YouTube page, Sports Hub Sunday Kickoff, wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back next week. I should have said this off the top. We're going through the draft, again, just like last year. So we'll be here every week, 8 a.m. Sunday. I'll be back next week. I think plans are on to be back then. Matt, thanks so much for filling in. Great job.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to everybody next week. Bye.
This is Boston's home for sports.
Zaka cross, they scored. Porzingis. Point a shot, rebound, score.
WBZFM and HD Boston 98.5, the Sports Hub. The Media Group Station. Sports Hub headlines.
The Patriots coaching search now a week in. According to multiple reports last night, the team has entered contract negotiations with Mike Vrabel to take over that job. Some reports also indicating Josh McDaniels could follow him as the offensive coordinator. Meanwhile, the NFL playoffs roll on. It is wild card weekend. 2 games yesterday. The Texans beat the Chargers 32-12, and the Ravens beat the Steelers 28-14. 3 games today. The Broncos take on the Bills at 1 o'clock. At 4:30, it's the Packers visiting the Eagles. And then at 8, the Commanders take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tomorrow night in the